So we'll talk a little bit about meats and then produce and some other things in between there as well. So the goal of this is we're trying to reduce the total load coming into the body, right? And so we're doing our best that we can to reduce that load while also not trying to be perfectionists about it, right? We don't want to stress out about it, but we're trying to be practical for health purposes. And then we're trying to pass that on to our kids and future generations as well, is to impact the food choices that we're making. So where we're spending our money can impact the demand in future generations of how this food is going to be properly taken care of. So why does this matter? So it's more than just calories. There's been studies upon studies about how calories in, calories out is just not correct. There is inflammatory signaling that goes on. There is neurotransmitter signaling that goes on. So there's a lot more to food than just a lot more to what you're putting in than just calories in and calories out, right? So every bite or contains information that we're eating. What was in the soil? What were the farming practices? What were they feeding the animals? How did they process it once it was out of the ground? But choosing organic, pasture-raised foods, we're trying to optimize what we're taking in. We might not be able to control every exposure, but we can reduce the total load entering our homes. So one grocery choice at a time. So we can do this. Small exposures and small choices accumulate over time. We've talked about this time after time of it's not just one big exposure, it's what you're doing on a day-to-day basis constantly that is going to add up. And we're not trying to be perfect. Like I said, we're trying to consistently maintain the highest quality foods that we can do. And everyone's going to be a little different there, and that's okay. So let's talk about organic. This has become problematic almost in just marketing, really. And there are certain things that you have to go through to become organic, and some of them are okay, and some of them just are not. And it just comes down to marketing, really. So conventional, in a sense, uses more synthetic pesticides and herbicides if we're talking about produce here, right? So synthetic fertilizers, genetically engineered seeds, and then growth promoting practices in livestock production as well. So certified organic farming restricts most synthetic pesticides and fertilizers. They're still going to use some, it's just less. So some people get that wrong, where they're still using some, it's just less. And then they're not going to use any genetically engineered seeds. They usually are going to prohibit antibiotics and growth hormones in livestock, and then still permit certain approved pesticides. So yeah, organic does not mean completely pesticide free, but there is less, which is good. And what we're trying to do with especially produce is maximize the amount of nutrients that we get from it. And that's what some of the fertilizers, some of the herbicides and pesticides are inhibiting some of that in the plant itself, and then from us getting it. Organic produce generally has fewer synthetic pesticide residues, but both organic and conventional may contain some residue. So what we suggest doing is soaking it, fruits and veggies, in a teaspoon of baking soda for about 10 minutes. There's some studies that show that gets like a lot of the pesticide off, especially the outside of that fruit or vegetable. So baking soda, 10 minutes. It's a good practice. Just do it right when you get home. So GMO versus non-GMO, we're not seeing as much of this as we used to, but it is still there. They're describing how we can read. It's not like organic versus GMO, because there's conventional non-GMO stuff out there as well. But genetically modified is a plant's genetic material has been altered using biotechnology to produce a specific trait. So they're most of the time for weeds, right? So insect resistance, weed resistance, herbicide tolerance to make them tolerate like the thing they're spraying on it a little more. And then GMO describes how the seed was developed. Organic, broader farming system covering soil practices, inputs, animal welfare. So there's a USDA certified organic. Food must be non-GMO. But non-GMO food is not automatically organic, right? So they're still conventional and still may be grown with pesticides. One way a quick guide you can do this, they are switching from this, but in general, from what I've seen, is this is still applicable. But a quick guide is, if you look at those little stickers on the produce, if it starts with a 3, that's usually genetically modified. If it starts with a 4, that's usually conventionally grown. And then if it's a 5-digit number that starts with a 9, that's usually organic. So 3, a 4-digit code starting with a 3, GMO 4-digit code starting with a 4. that's conventional, and then a 5-digit code starting with a 9 is organic. So that's a quick kind of reference you can do if you don't know that already. And if you like to read about these sort of things, Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. So this is just a book from, I think it was the 50s, that just talks about they never really evaluated the year-to-year accumulation of these herbicides and pesticides and insecticides. And so you're like, oh, this exposure at this dose is non-harmful to humans. But what they didn't calculate is the year by year by year by year accumulation of that. And so we have no clue. Some of these half-lives of these chemicals is years. And so we know, I believe glyphosate, 20 years it takes to break down half-life of that. So to break down halfway is 20 years, which is, it's going to be around for a while, even if we change what we do now, but it's going to affect the ecosystem. So it affects the bugs that are the good bugs that are in the soil, like our microbiome. We have good and bad bacteria and fungus and yeast and all these things. Soil has those things too. And so it's affecting some of those ecosystem within the soil. It's going to affect nutrients. So how does this affect us? So pesticides, herbicides, and hormone health. So I just picked out 2, sodium benzoate and atrazine. There's many, many others that have endocrine disrupting effects, but sodium benzoate is hidden in plain sight. It's found in soft drinks, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Sprite, salad dressings, Kraft, Wishbone, Newman's Own, pickles, condiments. So when you eat those pickles, sodium benzoate is in it. And then it's also in medicine, shampoos, cosmetics, especially like manicure, pedicure stuff. I know, ladies, there's a lot of endocrine disrupting effects. So that means estrogen, that means progesterone. There's a lot of sex hormone disrupting things with sodium benzoate. So look at your ingredients, see if it's in there. It's probably in a lot of things. If you're getting manicures and pedicures, it's probably getting done. You're getting this exposure. If you're having any hormonal issues, we got to look at some of this stuff because we have to limit the exposure of this endocrine disrupting hormone for hormones to get better. So if you're having a dysfunction in your hormone system and you're still putting in something that's disrupting hormones, we can do all of the therapies we want, but you're still disrupting it, right? You're still putting in something that is a detriment to that system. So we have to fix that. And how we fix it is avoidance. Let's create the demand for some better food, some more quality things that we don't have to worry about these things. Atrazine is in our water. It's most commonly used in herbicides in the US. If you look at EWG water database, you can kind of go and see what's in your water. Atrazine, I find very, very commonly to be in our water, especially in the Southwest here, Kansas. And that one, so atrazine has been known to turn male frogs into female frogs. So that's interesting with all the things that are going on in today's world, right? So chemicals can really change how our hormonal systems work. And it's one of those things you can't see it in water, but it's potentially there if you're drinking tap water. So I highly recommend doing some filtration system to get some of this junk out of the water. So I just threw this in there to bring some attention to these things are causing issues within our bodies and we need to help take care of them. And one of the ways we can help is by avoidance of these things. Okay, so the Dirty Dozen, Clean 15, you may have heard this or you may have not heard of this before, but the Environmental Working Group uses or has put these together. So this is what's the Dirty Dozen is what we want to buy organic when we can, because this is the most highly sprayed 12 things. Okay, so they rank detected by their residue levels. So strawberries, number 1, buy those organic for sure. Spinach, kale, peaches, pears, nectarines, apples, grapes. So you can read that list. If it's on that Dirty Dozen list, those are the things that we try to buy organic. Clean 15 is a group of foods here where they're a little more resistant, or they may have a skin like an avocado, or if they're sprayed, it's not getting absorbed as heavily into that plant. So the conventional is probably a little more fine on that. We still try to buy organic where we can here, but if some things are expensive, like bananas, we tend to buy organic because it's 50 cents more. It's not that expensive to buy organic bananas versus traditional or conventional. But some things are a little more expensive. So we kind of weigh each option and see what we want to buy organic versus non-organic. If you can afford to do all organic, great, do it. And it makes sense to do it, great. And if you need some help budget wise, the Dirty Dozen is a great way to piece apart. Okay, I should buy these organic because they're highly sprayed. If you can't do fresh, frozen is the next best for berries, greens. Often they're a little less expensive than fresh organic stuff. And then if you're buying anything from the store, don't forget to wash it with the baking soda. So beef, conventional versus grass-fed. So what the animal eats shapes the nutritional composition of its meat. So what it's eating is going to be in its meat, right? Just as a person's diet shapes the building blocks available to their own body, what that animal eats is what we're going to be getting. So you are what you eat, but more so you are what the thing you ate, or the thing you are eating ate. That was a quote from Dr. Gundry. And he's a big into lectins, which if your animal is eating lectins, there's going to be high lectins in your meat. And so lectins are just a protein that's really irritable to the gut, to plant defense mechanism. And so if your beef was eating a lot of lectins, your meat's going to be high in lectins. So that's just something to take into consideration. So conventional beef usually are finished on grain-based rations. So they're going to be higher in lectins. It's usually corn and soybean that they're getting fattened up with. And then it's going to change the composition of their fat. So this has definitely been documented here. So when you have 100% grass-fed, grass-finished, that's important. So when you're looking at it, it could say grass-fed, but a lot of times what they'll do in the last however many weeks, I think it's 6 to 8 weeks, is they'll be grass-fed up until that point, and then they'll feed them corn to fatten them up before slaughter. And so if it doesn't say grass-fed and finished, then it's probably just grass-fed for some of its life and then corn-fed for the rest of its life. So grass-fed and finish is generally going to be a little leaner. It's going to have a different omega-3 profile. So it's going to have a higher omega-3 concentration, whereas the conventional fed is going to have higher omega-6, lower omega-3. So the inflammation is going to be higher, is what that's saying. They're generally higher in vitamin K. And so that's just the cow's stomach and how it processes the grass that they're eating, right? It's pulling that vitamin K out of that grass, and then we have that available to us, where if they don't eat grass, they're not probably going to get vitamin K from it. And so we have a more favorable omega-6 to 3 ratio. So like I said, you want to look for both grass-fed and grass-finished. That's important when you're looking at these things. And then some of the things that you can look at here is like USDA organic beef whenever possible. And then there's some trusted sources, Butcher Box, White Oak Pastures, local farmers, if you know what they're feeding and how they practice, is really good too. So just look around, be cognizant of it. Chicken's a whole nother ballgame, right? So we can't have a grass-fed chicken because chickens really aren't going to be feeding on grass that much. So pasture-raised should mean more than a small door to a concrete yard. Pasture-raised can mean a lot of different things. You can go in and start reading about this and how chickens might be pasture raised, but that just means they have access to a pasture, not necessarily are in the pasture. And it's most likely they're still in this big shed, basically, and they don't really leave or see sunlight, but they have access to that door, but they never really go out. And so that could be pasture raised. So you have to know where your eggs are coming from, know where your chickens are coming from. So truly pasture raised chickens spend most of their lives outside on vegetated land, right? They forage, they're moving, they're scratching, they're receiving sunlight. That's important. And so don't buy the picture on the package. Try to research and see what these companies, how they're taking care of different aspects of how they raise their chicken, or know where your chicken's coming from, right? There's a lot of local chicken and eggs that people have access to. Labels that don't guarantee pasture access. So free range might mean minimal outdoor area, if at all. Natural or all natural, there's no pasture requirements for that. Humanely raised, not independently verified. We don't really know what that means, right? And then organic describes feed, not pasture access. So you can have organic corn that you're feeding them, and they could not be having any pasture access. So you can see how it can be tricky, and we just have to look at the wording and the marketing on it and just know where it's coming from. Some certifications that you can look for, and there's 3 there. that you can see. But like I said, if you know locally, you can kind of ask what are you feeding them? Are they out on the pasture at all? Are they going foraging at all? So that's a little bit better. How much time do chickens spend outdoors? Is their outdoor area covered with living vegetation? That one's a good one too. And then what are they fed? So budget friendly moves, grass fed, grass finished beef. So you can just get ground beef instead of steaks. Steaks are great, but if you're on a budget, they're a little more expensive, right? So go for the grass fed, grass finished, just ground beef. If you can do both, great, do both. Buy conventional clean 15 and mix and match, like I said earlier. Do what you need to. Frozen berries, really good. Organic frozen berries, next best to the fresh. And then ask local farmers about their practices. So doing the whole organic certification is really expensive. Some small farms often just follow organic methods without having to pay for the certification. So ask what they're doing and then let's support them, right? And then your challenge for the week here. So we're not trying to create fear here. We're not trying to create guilt. We're trying to inform you to make a better decision. And so ultimately, we're trying to reduce that load, is what we're doing. So try this week, swap one of the dirty dozen items for a clean 15 or an organic, especially if it's spinach, strawberries, apples. Try to get organic. Try grass fed, grass finished beef. See if you can find some butcher box, white oak pastures. Try it and see how you feel with it. See if you notice a difference with it. And then learn to read labels. This one's like a journey, and I feel like it's constantly shifting because they're trying to find loopholes around how to get people to buy their stuff. It's marketing, right? Pasture-raised and all of this stuff. Just do a little research into the company and see what you need to. And then I like doing local stuff. So if you know any local farmers, great. Check out your local farmers market, see what they're feeding the animals, and then let's support them with our money, right? Wash produce, so soak it in baking soda, 1 teaspoon, about 10 minutes. Conventional, organic, both. Just do everything usually a little bit better. And then save the list to your phone. Add the dirty dozen, add the clean 15, so you know which ones you need to do on that. And then that way, if there's something on sale, maybe that's organic, they might not buy normally. Maybe that's an opportunity to get something. So let's go out there and reduce any unnecessary load that we have, making the next attainable choice for us and our families. All right, guys. We'll catch you next week.